Yo guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel, or welcome if you've never been here before. So today I've just jumped on to do my market forecast for the week commencing the 21st of February. But before we get started with that, I will just draw your guys' attention to the written version of this forecast. The written version of this forecast will be available linked in the video description. And before we get started guys, if you are grateful for these videos, then please do like the video and please do subscribe to the channel because I really appreciate that. So let's jump into it. Alright, so Nzd Usd. On the daily, we're pretty much looking at the same thing that we've been looking at for the last couple of weeks. So we have this break of structure, so we know we've got our bearish bias from the daily based on this big impulsive move here, this break of structure. Now, in terms of where to continue that bearish bias from, for me, I'm looking at two order blocks which I perceive to have caused this whole break of structure. So the first order block that I'm looking at for sells is this extreme order block up here. So this is the extreme origin of that whole move. So if price does get back up there, then I would expect price to start selling off from there, and I will look from sells out of that area. So that's the first thing I'll definitely be looking at on Nzd Usd. Now that said though, what we've got is this candle here, which clearly included quite a lot of buy volume in these wicks here, and that's also where this imbalance started. So looking at it from that perspective, I do think that it could make sense for price to just sell out of this area as opposed to this area here. So looking at it like that, I'll also be looking for sales out of there. So from a daily perspective, firstly I'll look for sales from this area when we do get in there. Secondly, looking for sales from this area. So we'll have to see what happens, but from a daily perspective, I'm happy to sell out of either of these two areas. Now, looking at the 4 hour, the first thing I just want to draw attention to is that we've got this 4 hour impulsive order block, so the one which caused the previous break structure, and that lines up with that daily order block that's the lower down one, which I spoke about. So in an ideal world, if we are going to go from this area, from this whole area, then coming out of this candle here would be perfect. So if we do get that, I'll be really happy to take that position. But we'll have to see what happens with that. Now, with the shorter term on the 4 hour, what we've had is basically this high here has been broken now this week. So we didn't respect that area, which I was talking about was a possibility last week, and we've now actually broken the high. So if we look, where did this structural break originate from? It really originated from this bearish candle here. So considering that, we've got a clear order block there for buys, so that's clear demand order block, and we've got imbalance on that. So considering that we've got a reason for price to come higher, and we've got that order block there with imbalance, I do think that that's a pretty sensible place to look to buy from going into this week, and then we can target this first area as our first target. Now, what we've also got is a second bullish breaker structure on the 4 hour, which originated from this candle here. So we're already in this, so we have got this bullish order block as well. So starting next week, we could look to buy straight out of this area because it is literally a bullish order block, so we could just continue to see price come away from that. But considering that we've also got this one down here with imbalance, looking at buys to take us up into these daily areas, I'm definitely going to be more interested in this lower order block. But we'll have to see how price reacts when the market opens. But that's Nzd Usd this week, so start of a week or potentially this week we can just be looking for the buys to take us up into that area, and then when we do get into one of these two areas we can start looking for that reversal and then take sales away to target this daily low. So that's Nzd Usd, and if you guys have any lack of clarity because I've not explained something properly, then please do just check out the written version because all the information that I'm sharing here is written down in there. Alright, so moving on to AUD. So AUD, it's pretty similar in that the daily we've got the bearish bias, but on AUD we've got two consecutive break structure, so we're more confident in the bearish bias than we are on Nzd Usd. Now what we've also got is the most recent break structure was caused directly by this candle here, but but the actual origin of the whole move was this candle up here. So from that perspective, on the daily, we have got two areas that we could expect price to sell away from. So price could sell away from anywhere within here, and as we can see, price has already reacted off this area. Or it could continue going upwards following the bullish 4-hour structure and then end up at this extreme area here, and then it'll eventually sell off from that extreme area. So from a daily perspective, definitely in a bearish bias, and we've got this area up here from this candle, which is available for us to sell from, and we've got this candle here, which I also think is a valid order block for us to sell from, based on the fact that that's where the imbalance started, which actually caused that whole move that broke structure. So we've got them two opportunities on the daily, so let's take a look at 4-hour now. So 4-hour, we had this break structure followed by a second break structure. So what that actually did is transition the 4-hour into a bearish market structure and give us that bearish intent to show us that price wants to go lower from a 4-hour perspective. So considering that, I was looking at two POIs to potentially sell from. We have this one here, which has obviously been violated, and then now we've got this area here. So this is a very valid 4-hour supply area or bearish POI, and for me right now we've basically got this one which we could sell from, and obviously that's inside this daily POI, so it would make sense for price to just sell out of this area and then continue down. But what's got to be considered is that to get back up into this area, we did break structure here on the 4-hour, which did originate from this candle here essentially. So what we can't ignore is the fact that price does have a reason to go higher, and we've also got this 4-hour bullish order block to then send price higher. So from a 4-hour perspective, it's not super clear right now just because we have these two opposing POIs. But what I will be open to is start of the week, we come down into here before then going up higher, and that'll line up with the Nzd Usd thesis as well. So we come down into here before going up higher, and then we can buy up away from this bullish 4-hour point of interest. Now, what I'll also be open to is if we can get in on the hourly or 2-hourly structure coming away from here, then I do think that that sell is absolutely fine as well, because there's definitely a reasonable probability that price will just continue to push away from this area now. But until we see price violate this point of interest, we also have reason to believe that we are going to be going higher. So yeah, right now on AU, it's not super clear, but I think taking sells following away from that or buys following away from that, if you're using the lower time frames confirmation, then to me that makes perfect sense. And then on the daily, we are just looking at that overall sell thesis from either up here or from here. But when that move is actually going to kick off, we don't really know yet. So we'll have to see this week on AU. So let's move on to Euro dollar. Alright, so Euro dollar is a bit of a simpler one this week, hopefully. So we've had a break structure on the daily, but like we did last week, that gives us our bearish thesis. Now, this sell thesis is invalidated if this line gets closed above. As we can see, it wasn't closed above. We actually had a liquidity grab above it, and then price has wicked and closed back within it. So the sell thesis is still very valid. So considering that and considering the daily is a higher time frame, what I'm expecting is for price to just follow through with this daily bias to then come down to take this 200 pips and take out the low there. So right now on EU, personally, I do think we are going to see the continuation of the daily sell bias, because the daily does take priority over 4-hour. So in terms of that, I think it makes sense to just look to follow the hourly, 2-hourly and 4-hour structures if they present bearish opportunities, and then we can look to continue this sell move using the hourly structures. Now, that said though, what we've got is we've got the 4-hour is currently in bullish trend technically. So even though the trend was made during the retracement up to that daily POI, so that's why I do still think this whole bearish order flow does take priority over this bullish move here. What we can't do though is just ignore the 4-hour bullish move, because we are technically in a bullish trend, and on the 4-hour we do have this bullish momentum. So looking at the 4-hour, and like I say, whilst I do believe that we're more likely to go bearish, looking at the 4-hour, we do have a valid buying opportunity out of this area. So for me, if I start to see that the hourly is getting breaks of structure to the upside, coming out of this area, respecting this zone here, then I'll still be open to taking them buys because all this momentum here could easily push the market higher, and then we can just have that change of bias on the daily. But what I'm really hoping for and expecting is that we're going to get break structure, we'll get a retracement, and then we continue down to break the daily structure. And I look to sell out of the retracement area there. So we'll have to see what happens with the euro dollar, but it's essentially a case of either following the 4-hour bullish thesis or the daily bearish thesis. And we'll have to see what happens on the hourly time frames to decide what to do next. So pound dollar. So pound dollar, from a daily perspective, we've got a break structure to the high like we had the last few weeks. So based on that, that came from this order block down here, and in my mind that means we've still got a reason to come down here before then traveling upwards. So my longer term daily outlook is that we're going to see this bearish move here traveling down. That's going to be about 300 pips, and then we'll see a reaction off somewhere within this area, and then we'll start to travel up to break structure again, and that should be a pretty decent move as well. Now, I doubt we're going to get down here this week, or if we do, it'll probably be towards the end of the week. So I think while this is a valid buying opportunity, it's not something to be too fussed about right now. Now, looking at the 4-hour, we've still got this supply zone, which is the order flow invalidation, which I spoke about for the last few weeks. Now, that's been respected. We've seen multiple wicks into it this week, and we've seen the supply pushing price back out of it. So we have got the evidence of supply coming into the market. Now, to get back there, we did have to break structure, so that reset our 4-hour structure. Now, looking at the current 4-hour structure, what we had the liquidity grab there, and then we broke structure, creating this 4-hour order block, which is essentially a confirmation from this 4-hour order block. And what's happened is that this 4-hour order block coming away from this overall supply zone here is still being respected. So right now, what I'm seeing is that price is respecting the 4-hour supply zones. So for me, all I'm looking at this week is just continuing downwards now, away from this 4-hour supply zone. So what I look for is a retracement on the 1-hour, and then hopefully we can enter into that. And if everything goes to plan, that could take us down quite far towards this daily order block. I mean, we've got liquidity under there, we've got imbalance there, so there's multiple forces which are basically bringing the market lower down. So it's just a case of catching the entry at the right time, in my opinion. I do think that now we're seeing this rejection from the 4-hour order blocks, we hopefully can get a nice entry this week into GU to then sell it away and take it down here. That said, of course, if we do break above this order flow line, then I'll have to reassess the situation, because at that point we will have a bullish 4-hour structure. So let's see what happens with GU this week, but if we respect this area, then I'm definitely looking to basically just take sales away from this area, and that'll be using the 1-hour and 15-minute structures most likely. So Euro Pound. Alright, so Euro Pound, I've spoke about it the last few weeks, so if you want to see it more in depth, then you can go check out the previous forecasts. But after these breaks of structure, we've got this bearish order flow, which was left behind this order block here. Now, within that whole order block, if we look at the 4-hour, there's really two refinements that actually caused the break. So we have this extreme one up here, and then we've got this lower down one here. Now, what's interesting is that price has just tapped into my lower refinement of the whole daily order block, and then started this bearish order flow coming away. So what we might be seeing is just a continuation now, and instead of going deeper into that daily POI, institutions were happy to just react off this wick here, which is for our refinement, and then continue down. Now, to me, that makes sense because it still will have mitigated most of the orders that were in the market, and on top of that, we've got all this liquidity here. So, this weekly liquidity is probably a better incentive than the further mitigation, considering that we've already come away from that area now. So for me, what I'm really looking at is for price to just continue going down following away from that daily order block. And just looking quickly at the 1 hour, if you did want to follow that thesis, we can look for sells out of that area to then take us down and through. But we are quite far into this move now, so you know, you've got to be careful in terms of getting more confirmation with something like that, because it is also opposed by this demand area. Now, all that said about it following through from the daily, what we have still got is this massive impulsive move here on the 4 hour, which was clearly caused by this order block here within this wick and within this candle, and we can just refine to a wick at this point since price is already there. So, you know, there's so much volume that's come from that wick there. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see price now moving away from it. So what we could get is that price will just go further into our daily order block, following through with this impulsive move here, and then we'll sell away from that. So e.g. this week, if we do see evidence of buys, but I'll probably wait for at least the hourly to transition into the buy structure. If we do see evidence of buys coming in out of this area, then I think it's fine to take buys to then follow up to break structure again on the 4 hour and then look to sell away from this area when we do retrace deeper into the daily point of interest. But what I also think is fine, and since we are still in our 1 hour bearish market structure, is just following this hourly bearish market structure to follow the daily bias, which is sells away from that daily POI, which we are already reacting off. So yeah, that's pretty much what I'm seeing right now on Euro Pound. We can look for sells following the hourly coming away from this area here, or if you don't think that's going to happen and you want to follow this impulsive move here, then we can look for buys out of this whole area here. So I'll be open to either opportunity, and like I say, I'll be watching the hourly to see how price reacts. So pound yen. So the final pair of the day. Pound yen, most recent break structure is bullish. So we know our overall bias is bullish on pound yen. Now, just like on GU, we've got this huge order block at the low. So based on the similarity of the candle formation, for me, if GU gets back down there, I'd expect GJ to get back down there and vice versa. And if not, then I presume neither of them really will do right now. So that said though, what I am expecting on pound yen most likely is that we are going to end up back down here to fill all this imbalance and mitigate this order block here. Now, looking at the 4 hour, what we've got is, so on the daily, we came away from this area here, which is essentially could be seen as a daily base, which caused that whole break. So, you know, technically we don't need to come down into this order block, and we could just continue with our bullish order flow now to then break structure again on the daily. So that's definitely a possibility, and it could happen. But at the same time, we do have that reason to come further down. So at this point, it's really just a case of following the 4 hour to see what we actually get out of the 4 hour. So looking at the current 4 hour structure, we had 2 consecutive break structure to the high. So that gives us a 4 hour bullish trend. So we know that technically speaking, the bullish trend on the, the 4 hour trend at the minute is bullish. So we should be looking for buys in theory, following away from that. Now, you know, it makes sense. Price has come under here, grabbed the liquidity, and then filled this demand block here with imbalance. So essentially now we can just look to buy away from this area. So in terms of doing that, it's going to have to be following the 1 hour structure, which, yeah, currently there's not really anything that I'm super clear on with the 1 hour structure. So whilst I do think it makes sense to continue buys away from there, for me right now, I'm not going to be super interested in it because I have to see some clear 1 hour market structure for me to take the buys. But the thing is that whilst we are technically in a bearish uptrend, because the last time we had 2 consecutive break structure, it was bullish, we do have this bearish intent and bearish momentum in the market on the 4 hour. So what we've seen is the most recent break structure is bearish, and that's come out of this order block here. Now, at the end of last week, what we saw is price has literally tapped into that order block and then started to move away. And I'm just trying to work out the 1 hour high. So So yeah, I'm pretty sure that we haven't broke 1 hour structure to the low yet. But if we do get this 1 hour break structure to the low, then what we could look for is just to follow the 1 hour away from that 4 hour move. So something like this, and then we can target that daily low if we do get involved in this. Now, like I say here, we're trading with essentially this momentum, this sell volume that's coming to the market, and we're assuming that institutions are going to continue to sell away from this area. So, you know, definitely considering all this buying that took place, that could be wrong. We could just be continuing to buy because we are in a bullish trend, but we do have that evidence that sales are now coming into the market. We also have reason for price to go lower. So, yeah, pound yen, I think it's fine to basically look for sells following away from the reaction from this, following the 1 hour. I think it's fine to look for sells if we get deeper into this and then just follow structure once we take out the liquidity here, but still within this order block. And then if we do see the 1 hour being in a bullish structure, then I do think that looking for buys away from that 1 hour bullish structure is absolutely fine as well, because that will be following along with 4 hour trend. So that's what I'll be looking for this week on pound yen. But most likely, I'm going to be focusing on sells going into the week, and then I'll only start to look for buys if we do see that 1 hour clear bullish structure. Alright guys, so thank you very much for watching this video. If there is anything that's unclear, then do just leave it in the comments and I'll definitely respond to you guys if you do comment. Or if you feel like you don't want to comment, then just check out the written version of the description, because the written version of this forecast, because that has got pretty much everything that I'm looking at this week written within it. So thank you very much for watching, guys. Hope you guys all stick to your trading plan this week. Have a safe and profitable trading week. Good luck, guys, and thanks for watching.